In today's video, I'm going to show you how I created a personalized keepsake ruffled pillow using my cat's blankets. It has a little heart-shaped window that holds his fur and whiskers on the front and a pocket with his pictures on the back. I've added gold details around the window and ruffles. It also has my cat's name, Rouma, across the back pocket. This pillow was inspired by a dream I had months after losing my precious boy. It brings me comfort whenever I miss him, and I hope it will invite more vivid dream visitations when I include it in my bedtime ritual. To make the ruffles, I start by printing a pattern I designed in Canva onto cardstock paper. If you'd like to use the same pattern, it's available on my Facebook page. I cut out the design with large scissors, switching to a smaller pair for the detailed curves of the ruffles. Next, I trace the pattern 28 times onto my black blanket fabric to create double-sided ruffles, 14 for the front and 14 for the back. I recommend using a fine black Sharpie for tracing, but keep in mind that the ink can bleed through if your fabric is thin. To prevent stains, I clean my work surface and place a sheet of paper towel underneath before tracing. Once all the pieces are marked, I cut them out, again alternating between large and small scissors depending on the detail. Then, using black felt for added sturdiness, I traced the pattern 14 times and cut out those pieces as well. The felt pieces will go between two layers of blanket fabric since the blanket on its own is too thin for durable ruffles. I layer a piece of blanket fabric over the black felt and secure it with a small dot of hot glue in the center of each section. I repeat the same process on the back with another piece of blanket, sandwiching the felt in between. Next, I blanket stitch across the top of all 14 ruffle pieces using black embroidery floss. To measure the right amount, I stretch the floss across the top 3 times before cutting. Starting at the left corner, I place each stitch carefully between the curved details. When I reach the right edge, I tie a knot, trim the extra floss, and tuck the tail securely between the first 2 layers with a dab of hot glue. I cut out a section of the ruffle pattern to create a new stencil. Using this stencil, I draw 2 circles of different sizes in the center, then remove the outline with a craft knife, making sure to leave a small section on each side so the center stays intact. I'm using gold dimensional fabric paint that I transferred into a smaller squeeze bottle for more precision. I start by aligning the stencil with the first section of the ruffle piece. I trace the circle, then carefully lift away the stencil and complete the shape by hand. Next, I add small dots along each curved detail, followed by tiny dots just below them in between. To finish the design, I paint short rays extending outward from the central circle, pointing toward the tiny dots without actually touching them. Once the first section is complete, I move on to the remaining 2 sections of the ruffle piece, repeating the same process. I continue until all the ruffles are decorated with this design. I let the gold paint dry overnight for about 24 hours. For the heart pillow, I'm using a template from debsdays.com, which I printed twice on cardstock paper. After cutting out the shapes, I taped the pieces together with Scotch tape to form the full heart. The size I'm working with is about 15 inches tall. I also printed a smaller version, about 4 inches high, to create the window for my cat's whiskers and fur. I traced a large heart template twice onto a beige blanket using a fine black Sharpie, then cut out the shapes with scissors. To make the window, I place the smaller heart in the center of the template, trace it, and carefully remove the shape with a craft knife and small scissors. Using this new template, I traced the smaller heart outline onto one of the blanket hearts and cut it out to create the opening. For the window material, I reused a clear zippered storage bag I had on hand. I cleaned the section with Lysol and a paper towel, then cut out a piece slightly larger than the heart opening. I also cut a piece of black felt in the same size for the backing. I hot glued the plastic onto the back of the blanket heart. Before adding the contents, I cut a second piece of plastic to use as a protective top layer. Inside the heart window, I begin by arranging Rouma's whiskers on the right side like a little ray of sunshine. Then I carefully layer his fur on top, gradually filling the entire heart. Once I'm happy with the placement, I seal it with the second piece of plastic and add the layer of black felt behind it for contrast. Next, I blanket stitch around the heart window to secure everything and give it a neat, finished look. To measure the embroidery floss, I wrap it 3 times around the heart's outline. Starting at the bottom, I stitch carefully, especially when passing through the plastic, staying right at the edge of the blanket so I won't leave tiny holes. It takes patience since the plastic isn't see-through, but slow and steady works best. When the heart is complete, I tie 2 knots at the back and secure them with a dot of hot glue. For decoration, I use the same gold fabric paint to hand draw a design around the window. First, I outline a heart, gradually thickening the line. Then, I add small dividing lines to create curved sections similar to the ruffle design, finishing with tiny dots between each curve for detail. I let the paint dry for a full 24 hours. In the meantime, I work on the back pocket. I draw a line perpendicular to the center. I then fold the heart template in half and trim off the top curves. I trace this new shape twice onto the beige blanket and cut them out with scissors. I also trace and cut a matching piece from black felt. I layer the pieces together, placing the felt between the 2 beige blanket pieces and secure them with pin needles to keep everything aligned. Then, using black embroidery floss, I blanket stitch across the top of the pocket, starting from the left corner and working my way to the right. To personalize the pillow, I decided to add Rouma's name. I chose a calligraphy font I love from thefont.com called Hugs and Kisses. So sweet and fitting for this project. I printed his name on cardstock paper at the exact size I wanted. I draw a straight line beneath the letters along with a small guideline through the middle to help with alignment when placing it on the pocket. Using a craft knife, I carefully cut out each letter to create a stencil, leaving a few connecting spots uncut, especially inside letters like O and A, so the centers would stay intact. I plan to finish those details by hand later. Once the stencil is ready, I position it on the pocket and carefully outline the letters with gold fabric paint. Then, holding my breath, I slowly lift the stencil off, hoping not to smudge the design. I then complete the missing details by hand, fill in the letters, and let the paint dry overnight. Once the ruffle pieces are completely dry, I begin assembling them. I lift the first two layers of the straight edge of one ruffle and slide the extended edge of another piece in between. Then I secure everything together with hot glue, gluing the top two layers and the one beneath. I repeat this process until all the pieces are joined, forming a long garland. Next, I make small 1 cm incisions just below the first and last tiny dots of each painted section. These cuts make the ruffles more flexible and easier to shape around the heart. I trace the heart pattern twice onto black felt and cut out the shapes. I use one of them to measure the embroidery floss. To do this, I wrap black floss around the heart's outline, then cut it slightly longer to give me extra length for adjustments. Using this floss, I sew a running stitch across the corners of the incisions I made earlier, starting between the fabric layers to hide the knot inside. As I pull the thread, the fabric begins to gather, creating the ruffled effect I wanted. Even if the garland ends up longer than the heart's outline, it will fit nicely once adjusted. I don't knot the thread at this stage. Instead, I simply remove the needle, leaving it loose so I can adapt the length while attaching the ruffles. For the layout, I need 7 ruffle pieces for half of the heart, which positions the gap between the 7th and 8th pieces at the very top center. I start gluing at the bottom, securing the first ruffle with hot glue. I'm careful not to get glue on the running stitch so it can still be adjusted. I place and glue the top center next, then gradually work along the sides until the first half is complete. I repeat the same process for the second half. Once all the ruffles are glued in place, I tied 2 knots at the back and secured them with a final dab of hot glue. Next, I blanket stitched the front of the pillow. Again, I wrapped the floss 3 times around the heart. I aligned the beige blanket heart with the black felt heart and secured the layers with pin needles. Starting on the right side of the heart, I stitch all the way around. Once I reach the end, I tie 2 knots at the back and trim the extra floss. To prepare the backing, I trace and cut another heart shape from black felt. Flipping over the front of the pillow, I glued this black heart on the back, leaving enough space at the edges to stitch the final layers together. For the back panel, I layer the black felt, the beige blanket, and the pocket piece, then align everything carefully with pin needles. I close the pillow by blanket stitching around the heart, starting on the right side. When only a small opening remains, I fill the pillow gradually with polyester stuffing, then continue stitching until it's fully closed. To finish, I tie 2 knots and pass the needle through the layers, bringing it out through the blanket to hide the floss inside. Finally, to secure the ruffles, I measure another length of embroidery floss slightly longer than the heart's outline. Using a curved needle, I sew a running stitch through both the pillow edge and the ruffles to close any gaps. When I'm done, I tie 2 knots and tuck the floss neatly inside the pillow. And with that, the personalized keepsake ruffled pillow is now complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and feel inspired to create one of your own. I love placing mine on my chest while reading bedtime stories to my son, just as Rouma used to curl up on me during story time. Before bed, I take a quiet moment to look at his photos tucked in the back pocket and whisper how much I love him, how deeply I miss him, and how I hope to see him again in my dreams.